Global Times, 6 December 2022, U.S. Inflation Reduction Act sparks an Atlantic trade dispute. The 27-nation European Union has started to understand the proper purposes of the much misunderstood U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, passed by the U.S. Congress during the Biden administration after several months of silence, IRA. The act is essentially Washington's hefty $430 billion new green energy subsidy package intended to entice high-tech manufacturing jobs back to the U.S., disguising itself as an aggressive clean energy measure. The IRA grants generous tax credits to electric vehicles produced and sold in North America. Some American media have estimated the U.S. government tax incentive at $7,500 for a single electric car made and sold in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. This is similar to Donald Trump's import tariffs and quotas on imported steel and aluminum. Many European countries are alarmed because they fear the IRA will try to seduce manufacturing facilities within the EU. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, stated on Sunday that the U.S. measure would seriously distort international trade. American consumers will be given incentives under the IRA law to purchase new and used electric vehicles, heat their houses with heat pumps, or cook their food with electromagnetic induction. The U.S. measure violates WTO regulations, is seen as protectionist, and poses a severe threat to Chinese and European jobs, particularly in the green energy and automotive industries. It will also degrade free and fair market competition and harm businesses from Europe and other nations. Washington doesn't respect a level playing field in international competition or care about the interests of other economies. Therefore, the EU and other countries might change their state aid regulations and decide to subsidize their businesses. When visiting the U.S. this week, French President Emmanuel Macron brought up the problematic IRA with Vice President Joe Biden, who told reporters that there could be adjustments to be made to the U.S. law to make it simpler for EU enterprises to get U.S. government subsidies. But even Biden's fellow Democratic members of the U.S. Congress, not to mention the Republicans, have flatly refused to change the legislation. If the conflict involving the IRA across the Atlantic escalates, the EU may file a formal complaint with the WTO for investigation and resolution. This might involve tough negotiations or perhaps tit for tat between the two giant economies. The globe will have to wait and see if they can prevent another trade conflict and stop competing for government subsidies. By all standards, the IRA's enormous tax benefits for green high-tech enterprises that only produce in North America are incompatible with internationally accepted norms. It's a very protectionist tactic used to safeguard U.S. interests. The EU is expected to implement specific rebalancing measures to mitigate the distortions in the competitive environment brought on by the significant American subsidies made possible by the IRA. There is no doubt that the transatlantic issue will dominate ongoing discussions between European and American politicians, possibly to the detriment of earlier professed objectives for more profound and more extensive economic cooperation across the Atlantic. In a world that is changing quickly, there is reason to be concerned that transatlantic trade and economic partnerships are not performing to their full potential. Two examples include the Biden administration's thinly veiled adoption of Trump's America First foreign policy and the U.S. government's relentless efforts to use technology and the economy to restrain China's growth. For instance, the unfortunate Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership (TTIP) experiment, like the failed TPP deal, showed the potential of deepening transatlantic trade. Still, its failure in 2016 gave many worldwide a clear warning: Washington no longer sees marketing as a zero-sum game because it does not always benefit America first. Following this reasoning, the former Trump administration started a historic trade war with China, which the Biden White House has only expressed a token commitment to ending. In addition, The Biden administration shamelessly began to disrupt the global semiconductor supply chain earlier this year to obstruct Chinese high-tech manufacturing. Furthermore, it has convinced the EU to adopt a similar strategy to decouple the Chinese economy. In other words, as long as Washington believes that unhindered and free commerce is no longer at its best advantage, it will pass laws and restrictive regulations like the IRA or high-tech embargoes to disrupt and divide global supply lines. To maintain its superpower status and continue to stifle other economies to beat China, it intends to rip apart the global economy and the process of globalization. China is currently the biggest threat to globalization, initially designed to cooperate against the Soviet Union.